Dobro jutro svima. Kako ste lepo ušli i good morning. Baš lepo. Dobro jutro. Ajde počet ćemo. Znači, deco, ja sam se prehladila, što bi se reklo, ne dao Bog nikom, ali dobro, nije strašno, nije korona ili nešto. And I hope I'll survive. So before we actually go back to where we stopped last week, I would like to just tell you that a student, a colleague, noticed that the deadline for the first task, for the first assignment, he told me that it had been, I don't know, changed somehow, and that the deadline is today, which is not true. I don't know how the date changed, but the date is the 27th of November, the deadline for the first task. And I tried to repair that or to change the date again, but I couldn't. Somehow I couldn't. So you should know that it's the 27th of November, not today. The deadline. Many of you have already posted the first task, the first assignment, so it's not relevant for those who have already done that, but it's relevant for the people who have not submitted their first task, and they still have a lot of time. I would say 10 more days. So it's the 27th of November, and I'll soon post another task because it's time to do that, taking into account that this semester will be shorter than usual. It only has 11 weeks, and that time flies, and that you actually need to plan things in advance. So it's good to have things assigned earlier. And today, so that's the first thing. Yes, and the second thing I wanted to remind you of is that we have our next class on Monday the 22nd, and I will send you an invitation to that lecture, and that means that you will ignore the invitation for Wednesday, because then you have the midterm test, pedagogy, I think. So I will send you the invitation to our next class, which is on Monday, and which is devoted to Adrian again. So the second section only. No, you don't have to read the whole book. So just the second section for Monday. And we'll continue with our talk about argumentation, arguing about Adrian and his family, based on the text that we will read. Now we'll go back to our previous topic. It was conversational grammar, and I shared a document with you where you could see some basic characteristics of spoken language, not all types of spoken language, all genres of spoken language, but only conversational grammar, just in order for you to see that there is a huge difference between written and, well, not a huge difference, but yes, a big difference between spoken and written genres, spoken and written language. Now I'll share the document again, and we'll continue with the same topic, conversational grammar. So maybe I could just briefly scroll the document upwards so you can see what we did last time. So as I told you last week, you're not supposed to remember this. You're not asked in your Contemporary English 1 to remember any theory. We'll just talk in our oral exam. But this is just to become more aware of these differences, and that in your oral exam, you're not supposed to follow the conversational style, but the academic style based on written language. So we can actually check your grammar. So it's based on descriptive grammar. Your oral exam is based on descriptive grammar, on written, not conversational grammar. So you should avoid, although we will share the same content when we talk in our oral exam, you should avoid Substitutes, words that don't have rich semantic meaning. Your actually oral exam should consist of words. You should use words that are rich in meaning, specific words, not general words, and avoid using too many pronouns like this, there, here. Others do, others. So that's not wrong, that's not bad, but it will look like conversational grammar rather than written grammar, which you're supposed to master in our exam. And of course, you should avoid these words such as, I think you can see them, yeah, okay. Well, okay is okay, but and sorry is okay, but not you should use those words too much. So not the words that you usually use in unless there is, of course, a good reason for that. And the second characteristic, avoiding elaboration or specification of meaning, which is actually the total opposite of what you are supposed to do in your exam. So you should actually elaborate and specify meaning. That's why we practice using synonym and paraphrasing words. So we need to use the vocabulary that is as specific as possible. And you should avoid lexical bundles or, let's say, cliches, words, phrases that are used in conversational speech. Stuff like that. She turned over 80 odd. That's not a bad thing, but you should avoid sort of, like, kind of, pretty much, basically. Well, basically is a discourse marker, but kind of, sort of, which is not used in elaborations. When you say kind of, that shows that we actually don't know what the proper word, what word should be used in that context. So avoid kind of, pretty much, like, sort of, stuff like that. For example, what is the meaning of this word? Well, it refers to this and stuff like that, which actually doesn't mean anything. Negatives, well, that's okay if there is a good reason for that. Eliciting responses is something that is completely well, I will elicit responses in conversation. So when I ask questions, I will elicit. Elicit means ask you to give me responses. And yes, you can then use question tags, which are actually not easy to use properly. We kind of find it difficult to use question tags. Now, I think that's where we stopped there. So in conversation, we use a lot of attention signaling form like, hey, hey, which means that when we converse with people, we're, of course, tied to the extra linguistic course as well. And then we draw someone's attention by using, hey, hey, look at all the trackers. You wouldn't use hey, hey, for example, in formal language, formal situations when you talk to someone who you're not close to. You wouldn't say hey to, I don't know, an older person or someone you don't know really well. In conversation, again, you use vocatives. They don't have the vocative is different in English from Serbian, because vocatives in Serbian are morphologically marked, and in English they're just address forms for getting attention. So in conversational English, of course, you use lots of vocatives such as mom, Michael, dad, honey, and discourse markers, as I said, basically is a discourse marker. So you can use discourse markers, but only when it's necessary, of course. And yes, your use of discourse markers shouldn't be based on avoiding elaboration and specification, but based on providing specification and elaboration. Now, another term that you can find here that is used in bold letters, speech act. Speech act, maybe some of you have heard about this term or the notion of speech act, which is a very useful notion to remember, because it reminds us that language is not only used for the purpose of describing things in the outside world, like you use words to describe your room, your faculty, your kitchen, your place, your country, but language, aside from being used as a means of describing the world that surrounds us, we also use words to act. This is really important, because that means that words should not be separated from our deeds. Or, in other words, whatever you say, you should abide by those words. You should commit to what you say, because if you don't do that, then people can say, well, he or she is not committed to whatever he or she says. That's important, because that suggests how words are important. Always stick to your words. U srpskom kažemo čovjek se veže za reči, to je to. So don't ever say something that you cannot realize. For example, if you say, I promise I will do that, and then you don't do that, that means your speech act has failed for many reasons. I won't go further into that topic, but speech acts are frequently used in conversational language, and they can be marked such words can such acts can be expressed by means of the words thank you, please, sorry. Because when you say thanks, you actually express gratitude. You act in that way. You express gratitude. When you express gratitude, that's an action. When people say he's not grateful, or she's not grateful, that's a very serious accusation, and we should never be grateful for something. So anyway, when you say thank you, that means that you express gratitude, and these words are often used in conversational grammar. In addition to thank you, you also say please, sorry, and you can of course join them with vocatives such as sir and madam if you address someone who's thank you, sir, or thank you, madam, or sorry, madam, sorry, sir. We tend to avoid these words because, or actually using such vocatives, because we're actually not. You have one elective course, I think it's in the second year, where you can learn all these phrases and vocatives, which we all actually need to know so we can address people properly. And why do we avoid them? Because they're conventions and they have to be learned. It's not something you can use creative, so they're conventions. So if you want to, if you talk to someone who's not close to you and you want to express respect, and for example, someone who's older than you, you can say thanks, sir, or thank you, sir, or thank you, madam. And you use, of course, in conversational speech or conversational grammar, you use speech acts, which can be expressed by means of modal verbs such as would you, could you, or let's, which is a way to suggest something. Or you can use, you see this, give it a rest, get your tail out to the soup. This is like an order. This is a directive, the speech act of making someone to act. So you direct someone. Then in the conversational speech, you can use endearments or endearing words such as darling. I'm coming in a moment, darling, which are different from sir and madam in the sense that they are vocatives, but they are used in different contexts. You use darling, you don't use darling, for example. You don't say that to someone who's I don't know, if you don't know the person and he or she's older and you say darling, that would be wrong. Then interjections, exclamations, or interjections. Oh, wow. Those are the words and expletives, such as bloody or swear words, are words that you use in a conversational rather than written style. We can use it in text messages. Like I use that in text messages, but not in written style. Especially in those genres which do not allow that. There are different genres of written speech which would allow that. For example, if it's fiction, and specific subtype of fiction such as drama, then you would allow this, because dramas are based, tragedies, comedies, they're based on a specific type of language where you try to recreate action. But not in novels. Well, in novels, yes, but not in, for example, academic writing. You wouldn't use in scientific journals, unless you actually study those words, but you don't. That's not academic style. And what you actually do in our course and in the faculty, you master how to use academic language. So I don't agree with people who say that when you write, for example, essays, that's what I disagree with those people who say that when you write an essay, you can write about anything. No, this is academic writing. You cannot write about something that's, I don't know, trashy or cheap just because it's an essay. This is academic writing, so it's a specific type of writing. Now, you use lots of exclamations in spoken language. What a riff-off. How wonderful. Good for you. These are all phrases you can use in conversational style. And you use evaluative, predicative adjectives which are not specific. You use good, lovely, nice, but you don't use more specific words, not that frequently. And yes, you use really, actually, in fact, quite frequently. We all use really, actually, in fact, frequently in conversation. Now, as conversation takes place in real time, that means that we are under pressure to talk both fluently and accurately, which is not easy. And we don't have time to edit or change or make or correct whatever we say, in contrast, of course, to writing, where you have plenty of time, usually, to write sentences perfectly. Which means that in real time, when you talk with someone, your our language is characterized by disfluencies. Disfluencies meaning we can use hesitators such as repeats, I, and that happens frequently, or repairs. So, for example, you can repeat, he'll see the. That's what we do in conversation, because this is normal. Because when we converse, we actually think while we say things. Of course, we think, and then it's not easy to actually, when you want to say something, to clarify your own thoughts. We're full of thoughts in our minds. They can be really chaotic, and then when you converse, you actually have to package your thoughts into sentences, which is not easy to do in such a short time, in real time. And that's why these disfluences happen. He'll, because you are thinking about the things, and then you produce, and then you utter the words. And then you have repairs, where what do? You repair what you want to say, and that's labeled as a false start. So, for example, you can say, "Mom, give me a rest. Give me the rest." So you repair yourself all the time. Or, "I don't think you," and then you stop, and then you repair yourself. "I think you should leave." That's what we do all the time. But it happens, and it's good to. It actually proves and shows that we monitor ourselves. This is proof of self-monitoring. So you start talking about something, and then in a split second you realize that you need to repair yourself. And of course, you use lots of reduced forms in conversational speech, such as "it's can't," which is not advised in academic writing. So you will be told on many times in the future at the faculty that you shouldn't use contractions when you write, or morphologically reduced forms like "gonna." That's also conversational. conversational style, because when we speak, we merge phonemes, and then instead of saying going to, you just say gonna, because it's easier to pronounce that. And various types of ellipses, of course. And then you use repetitions. For example, if I say, let's serve this damn chili, then person B just repeats. Let's serve the chili. So I'll post this document in the Google Classroom, so you can take a look at it if you would like to. But this is, as I said, not something that you're supposed to learn, but just to be aware of the differences. And let's end with the vernacular range of expression. Conversation employs a vernacular range. What is even vernacular? That means the language we use in our place. That it's like our own dialect. So when you talk to people privately, you use the so-called vernacular language. It's informal language, and it's vernacular. It doesn't have to be standard English. You use vernacular. Maybe you don't use. Maybe you even use standard language all the time, but even that could be regarded as vernacular in the sense that that's the language you use in informal situations. And vernacular grammar could be defined, or could be defined as the regional dialect, but it may happen that your vernacular actually is you never use the regional dialect. You always use, for example, standard language. For example, in southern states of the USA, you use y'all instead of you all. Or the vernacular in some regional dialects, which are considered as non-standard, which means they're not accepted as standard grammar, which should exist because we need that standard grammar in order to understand one another. If we don't have standard language, that means that dialects would be, in time, gradually, they would become so different from one another that we wouldn't be able to understand us. But they're interesting, and we should use our dialects. They're nothing to be ashamed of. No one is ashamed of their own dialects. I actually heard that all in Serbia, in Germany, in England, in the United States, Russia, everywhere. People are proud of their dialects, and they actually like to hear someone else's dialect. But of course, in certain institutions, in certain institutional frameworks, you have to use standard language. So that's something you should be aware of. But I had a colleague, it's probably true, she works at the faculty in Norway. She did her PhD here in Nice, and now she works in Norway. She's an associate professor, and she told me that, or it's Nina, her colleague, I don't know, one of them told us that when they entered the classroom, the first thing they said to them that when students enter the classroom in Norway, the first thing, students who study linguistics and philology, the first things they say to the students is, you should use your own dialects, not standard. Don't be ashamed of your own dialects. And for example, people like who live in Germany, like Bavaria, for example, they say, well, I don't understand Bavarian language because it's so different from standard German. But anyway, that's something we should not. Some people connected with higher status, which is, I don't know. It's just, I don't know what I can say about that. It's okay. And take a look at this sentence. But somehow I, me, and this other bloke. So here, the speaker changes from I to me, which is non-standard. It should be I and this other bloke. But the speaker changes me to coordinate it with the noun phrase this other blog, but this is not standard. You should say I and this other blog, not me and this other blog. Me would be part of vernacular, or for example, in academic language, you should use I and this other blog, not me and this other blog. Now, I'll post this document in the Google Classroom so you can have it. And now we'll turn to our next similar, not topic, but handout. Another discourse perspective on grammar. A discourse perspective on grammar. That's what this document is, or actually this topic is. It's defined as a discourse perspective on grammar, and I'll share this document with you. What does that mean, a discourse perspective on grammar? That means exactly the same things that I just talked about now and last week, that discourse is actually the relationship between language and context, language and social use. So a discourse perspective on grammar, it means you use the grammar that is appropriate in certain social situations. That's it. And in that sense, spoken language and written language, which are different because they're used in different situations, of course they are different. And now I will kindly ask you to take a look at these questions 1 to 11. I will, for example, zoom it this way so you can see questions 1 to 6, and try to answer questions 1 to 6 on your own, and then you'll try to answer questions 7 to 11 on your own, and then we'll discuss this, why you answered the questions in that way. So you have, 10 minutes to go through the questions 1 to 6. And then a volunteer will read the replies. And don't be ever worried about being right or wrong. This is just a conversation, and you should always grab the opportunity to speak about interesting topics. Hoće li neko da proba da odgovori na pitanje? Ajde, nije ništa strašno. Ova skraćenica SGSVE. Student grammar of spoken and written English. That's the topic we are discussing now. So, any volunteers? Ima li neko ko bi hteo da proba? So let's go to the second question. The first one is true. The first one is true. It's about this grammar that deals with the whatever, well, with the things that are given here. And it's true, but that's the question is just there for the sake of an example. Now, a descriptive grammar presents rules about correct and incorrect stylistic choices. Is that true or false? A descriptive, znači opisna gramatika, bukvalno to vam je zapravo morfologija ili ti morfosintaksa, znači tvorba reči, kako se, ne tvorba reči, nego flektivna takozvana gramatika or inflectional grammar, which is in English very it's simple compared to our morphology, because we have, for example, for the verbs we use different endings. Idem, ideš, ide, idemo, idete, idu. In English, they only have the third person singular. So that descriptive grammar. So our descriptive grammar would be much more complicated when compared to the English grammar. Plus, all the syntactic elements that are closely related to the inflectional morphology. Znači, ako kažete idemo, šta posle se mi idemo. Znači, morate kažete mi idemo, to je sad već sintaks. Znači, šta se koristi uz nastavak mo. Idemo, mi. In English, it's not that complicated. In Serbian, it's more complicated. In that sense, do you agree, or in that light, do you agree that a descriptive grammar is about correct and incorrect stylistic choices? No, it's not about styles. It's about the rules or patterns that speakers and writers follow. Znači, deskriptivna gramatika nema veze sa stilom, nego sa pravilima, patternama, obrascima, patterns that speakers and writers follow. Znači, kad pišete i kad pričate, moramo da imamo u glavi deskriptivnu gramatiku, pogotovo in written language. Šta je sa trećim pitanjem? A prescriptive grammar describes the grammatical patterns that speakers and writers follow when they use the language, regardless of whether the patterns conform to standard English that is presented in usage handbooks. This is false again, because why? Milan.
Actually, a prescriptive grammar is a set of rules based on how people think language should be used.
Yes. Yeah, well, yes, that's prescription, how it should be used. So in that sense, we can say that it's about stylistic choices, because descriptive grammar describes rule and prescriptive grammar describes, yes, preskriptivna gramatika. Pa sad možemo da kažemo preskriptivni teror. Znači, neko sad nekog tera da koristi neke reči, on neće, na primjer, poći svoj dijalekt. Yes, so that's prescriptive grammar, which actually, yes, tells you which styles are correct and which ones are not correct. Okay, how about 4, Milan? What do you think?
A corpus is true.
It's true, but there is something more that we should add to this sentence. Ona jeste tačna, ali je nedovoljna.
Yes, a collection of written texts.
Not only,
like entire works.
All texts, both written and spoken texts.
Yes,
Šta je spoken text? To je ono što smo pričali. Znači, spoken text je u stvari transcribed spoken text. It's easy to put written text into a database and then find it on a computer. I to jesu korpusi, kolekcije tekstova, zbirke tekstova. Pisani tekstovi su lakši, znači prosto ga stavite u database. Spoken language should be first transcribed. Kad neko priča, kako ćete da ga staviti? Možete staviti link, ali link neće biti večno na internetu. Link za spoken language, neki YouTube, for example. Oni vremenom nisu više tu. Znači, ako bismo hteli da if we would like to have spoken text in a corpus, then we would have to transcribe it first, and then we have the so-called, taj se izraz koristi, spoken text. To zvuči čudno kako to spoken text. Pa transkribovan se nisi. Tako da samo treba dodati spoken and written text in a computer. I imate recimo, there are many different types of corpora online, many different collections. Na primjer, imate jedno što ja vrlo često konsultujem, Globe se čita, piše se GLOWB. To su mnogo korisne zbirke so you can check whether you've used a certain construction properly, and it's based on written texts. I haven't researched it enough, so maybe it also contains spoken text, but certain corpora have only written text. Some of them have both spoken and written text, and some of them have spoken text. So it depends on a corpus. Šta je korpus u stvari? Znači, to vam je zbirka tekstova iz pravog života. Jer mi kad smo bili studenti, when I was a student, we didn't have corpora on a computer online. And we, for the purpose of our research, had to create our own corpora for the analysis on any morphological issues or whatever. And we usually used fiction, because fiction is easily found. But it was difficult to, or newspapers, printed newspapers. But it was difficult to analyze speech because we didn't have corpora of spoken text. And nowadays, thanks to computer technologies, we have that as well, so we can study. And corpora now used widely by many researchers. Now, 5, Milan, one of the advantages... Šta mislite za 5?
Maybe it's false.
No, it's true. Odlično što ste to rekli, zato što korpus, pazite, corpus is real life texts, which means that it includes whatever we say. And then when you analyze sentences and texts in any corpus, you actually see how speakers and writers diverge from grammar in different communicative situations. Jer pazite, imate standardni jezik. You have standard language, standard English, standard Serbian. And we know when to use, I don't know, the article, when to use the article, and we all know the rules. But then what happens in real life? Or, for example, I've heard many people say that the modal verb ought to is no longer used, only should is used, which is actually not true. Corpora show that ought to can also be used. Maybe not that frequently, but it's also there. So you check rules in real life. Korpusi su vam, da vam kažem, empirija zapravo. Znate šta je empirija? Život, iskustvo. Šta se stvarno, što bi se reklo, na terenu, on site. So in real life, what happens in real life. And it doesn't mean that we will now say, well, if people, corpora prove that people use this grammatical, don't use this grammatical construction, so let's forget about grammar. No, it just proves that some people maybe don't know the grammar, or that's, I don't know, a specific genre where people use language. So that's empirical, that's an empirical thing. So, to je to. Korpus je zato zanimljiv, jer možete da proverite kako ljudi poštuju neke gramatičke strukture. To je malo interesantno. Šta je sa 6, šta mislite? Another advantage. Ovo je tačno isto. Znači, tu možete da nađete a sad, pazite sad ovo. Imate takozvane deskriptivne gramatike. To su gramatike i danas koje su bazirane na, kad nisu bili korpusi, prosto su ljudi pisali gramatike. Znači, o gramatici se pričalo od Aristotela. Znači, uvek se razmišljalo o parts of speech. To je isto mnogo zanimljivo. So there are different parts of speech, grammar is. It's a philosophical question, actually, the relationship between language and life. It dates back to Aristotle. And descriptive grammars have been written for many ages. But then you have the so-called corpus-based grammar. Corpus-based grammar, which is based on what we can find in corpora, and it can reveal associations between grammatical structures and vocabulary. So you can see when people use certain grammatical structures with which words. You are still young and you're incredibly young, and maybe this sounds a little bit too abstract for you. This sounds abstract to you, but in time, it will just everything will just sink in, and you will see how meaningful this is, what we are now talking about, and you may find a little bit too abstract. Now, how about 7? A register... ne, se beše do 6 ili do 7? Do 6. Ajde sad idite ovako, sad ću da vam kažem. Pogledajte pitanje od 7 do 11. I razmislite, pa ćemo onda nekog drugog da ne bude samo Milan Nušić. Hvala vam, Milan, u svakom slučaju. Znači, pogledajte pitanja 7 do 11. Hoće li neko da proba? Da pročaskamo, znači, ajde. A Milan opet li? Pa ajde, ako neće. Milan, ajde. Mora nam, naravno. Pa niko se, da vam kažem svima, niko se nije naučen rodio, znači. I nema čovjek koji misli...
Pogledam
da, ništa. Ajde. Okay, let's talk about a register is a variety.
Maybe this one is true because register often refers to people that share similar work or interests.
I can understand your line of reasoning. A register is a variety that is associated with speakers who share. It's tricky.
Yeah.
It's tricky. Actually, instead of using the word register here, the word dialect should be used. A dialect is a variety of language that is associated with speakers who share certain characteristics, such as gender. A register is not associated with a specific group of speakers. It's associated with a specific use of language in a certain situation. So it
degree of formality of languages.
Yes, regardless of speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of speakers. So a register, you can recognize register regardless of who uses that register. And if we say, if we use a dialect instead of register here, then that's a dialect is a variety of language that is associated with speakers who share certain gender associated, which actually makes me think that, yes, you're right in the sense that those words, dialect and register, are similar somehow, but dialects are related to gender, socioeconomic, and geographic region, and the people who share those characteristics. But dialects and register is something that is observed without speakers. It's more general. It's only related to a specific situation. And then 8, a dialect is a variety of language. Now we have a register. So sad, znači treba se svi čuje. Znači a register, and here you actually have a very good definition of both a dialect and a register, but they should be swapped. A register is a variety of language that is associated with certain characteristics, not with speakers, but with certain characteristics of a communicative setting. Kad se kaže communicative setting, misli se na situaciju, komunikativnu situaciju zapravo, such as the purpose of communication, the amount of time for planning, and the mode, spoken, written, to a register. And then you have 9. What do you think? Različiti registri. Evo vam registri, ja ću da vam dam neki registr. Prvo imate spoken written, the major difference. And then within the group of written registry you have newspapers, fiction, and academic register. And within spoken language you have, well, for example, political speeches, academic lectures, and spoken language. So do you think that they have different frequencies for the use of certain grammatical structures? Conversational English can also be one specific type of register within the group of spoken language. So do you think they have different frequencies?
Maybe.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yes, definitely. So good. And then we have question 9. Never 9, 10. So standard English, pazite, ovo možda ne znate, is one unvarying form of English that is always easy. To nije tačno. The standard English, within standard English you have variability. Šta to znači? Pa posvađat će se i dva Engleza, ne u nam ružnom smislu. They will argue over the usage of certain things. For example, the famous example is the splitting infinitive. Recimo, kad kažete he did that to he went out to consciously hurt her, something like that. So some grammarians would say that it's incorrect to consciously hurt her. They would say, no, it's to hurt her consciously. So you cannot split the infinitive. But some grammars actually have accepted the split infinitive as standard English. So you see, sometimes there are variabilities even within standard English. Why is that so? Because language is always larger than life. And people always have doubts about certain usages. And before something is accepted as standard English, it was first non-standard. And it happens that, for example, a word is not standard, and then slowly becomes included in dictionaries. That's what lexicographers do. They include the word in the dictionary, and then it becomes established, which means that language is not a fixed thing. It's standard, and that's that will always be like that, or non-standard, and that will always be like that. It changes. It changes because language has two sides. It's both based on conventions, but it's also creative. So creativity and convention are the two forces that work in language, and when those two forces collide, we have these variabilities within standard English. And finally, 11. There is a group of experts that officially decides whether or not a grammatical form is standard English. This is not true. There is no official group that designates standard English, but of course there are people like lexicographers who monitor language, and they, for example, Oxford Dictionary or Cambridge Dictionary, sometimes they can diverge in certain specifications because they have different data at hand. So they all, it's not like a specific group, official group that designates that. It's more like watching what happens in real life. And then if you see that many people use this to consciously hurt her instead of to hurt her consciously, then slowly it becomes accepted. So you know that it's not that it's not like a matter of designation. Someone says this is it, and everybody has to use it, because it's impossible. It just doesn't work that way. You cannot make people, you cannot compel people to use certain word if they don't want to use it. That's the problem. That's the problem. So you cannot make someone, and then you, in that sense, you have to watch what you can. For example, say this is standard, but then you see that in real life, probably for some cognitive reasons, intellectual reasons, the way our mind works, that, for example, construction or pattern slowly becomes accepted, and that's interesting actually to watch. And now I'll stop the. Oh no, we have. Pogledajte sad ovo. Give an example for each of the following. Imam još jednu stvar koju bih radila danas sama, ali nećemo stići najvjerovatnije, pa ćemo to ne 22. nego nakon toga. Give an example for each of the following. Pazite. Try to think of your own original examples. A very specific sub-register and a more general register. The most general registers are academic fiction and newspaper discourse, for example. As these are the most general register. But there are some less general registers and some very specific sub-registers. Then you're supposed to give a geographic dialect and a social dialect and a prescriptive rule for English. I'll tell you that this fourth question is about this, for example, the split infinitive, or the prescriptive rule is never split an infinitive. That's the prescriptive rule. But actually that doesn't survive in real life. And it's also included in a university grammars written by Quirk and Greenbaum. This one is written was by Biber, Douglas Biber and et altera. And he actually gives this as an example of a prescriptive rule, but he probably knows, he's aware of it, because he wrote his own grammar, and it's always based on the research into other grammars or another grammars. But actually, in the descriptive grammar by Quirk and Greenbaum, this prescriptive rule is actually, I actually talked with an English person, with a Briton, about this, and we actually did argue about this split infinitive. He's very conservative, and he did say that he doesn't like that. He just cannot accept that the split infinitive doesn't sound to him. But then I did tell him that it's your personal subjective feeling, and it has been accepted in the University Grammar of English, and many other native speakers actually do use the split infinitive. So it's interesting to see how the prescriptive rule can exist and can be accepted by some native speakers, and others can say, well, it's just rubbish, I will use it, why not. Now, a very specific subregister, šta je to? Recimo, no, baš onako, ako imate if you have in mind that, let me help you, that the academic language and newspaper and fiction are the three most general, what would be the subtypes of these three registers? What could be subtypes? Within the academic language, it could, for example, be an article. Šta je an article? Članak. Neki naučni članak. To vam je podvrsta, znači, nekog registra. An article in a journal. And then you have more general register. Šta mislite? To bi opet bio neka vrsta academic writing, you could say. But not like, for example, essay writing, but different types of research papers. Znači, jedan specifični vid jeste članak. Širi tip je sve vrste članaka koje spadaju u akademsko pisanje, a akademsko pisanje najšire. Šta su geographic dialects? Dajte neki primjer za geographic dialect. Šta mislite? Geographic dialect. Pa geographic dialect bi recimo bio Serbian in different geographical parts of the country. Ili recimo ako je engleski, geografski dijalekt bi bio engleski u Severnoj Dakoti, u, ne znam, New Orleansu, to su sve geographic dialects, unlike a social dialect, which is what? Da kažete social dialect, uvek imate na umu gender also and specific, znači društvenu ulogu neke osobe. Znači to može da bude određeni predstavnik određene, a representative of a certain class and gender. Znači može bude a rich Latina woman or a low-income Latina woman or a low-income Latino man. To je već social dialect. Znači ovo je geografski, a socijalne već uključujete društvene parametre. Znači gde smo na toj liniji rod, zatim posao, status, to su već društvene uloge i tu isto imamo različite upotrebe jezika. Znači ako je čovjek obrazovan, znači on će koristiti pre standard English ili će prosto znati razliku pa će kombinovati, combine, you actually switch, you switch the codes. You can talk using your non-standard language in private communication, everyday communication, then you use standard language at work. That would be, we won't do this last exercise because I would like you to, I would like to share another document with you. I don't know if I can send it via chat. No, I cannot. So I have to, Znači, ne može se pošalje dokument. Sad ću vam poslati jedan tekst na e-mail adresu. Počet ćemo da pričamo o tom tekstu, pa ćemo sljedećeg časa onog tamo posle 22. Zato je nastaviti. Jedan jako interesantan tekst. Which we will use to analyze all these elements like register, style, genre. So we'll try to apply this to this text. And of course, it will be interesting to you to talk about the ideas behind the text. But let me first find your address, and then I will send it to you via email, and we'll start talking about that topic. Samo sekund, znači da pronađem adrese vaše. Okay, I've just sent the text via email. Znači, pogledajte svoj inbox, email inbox, da li ste dobili tekst Summerhill. I, verovatno ste dobili, i ako biste mogli, znači, ajde da probamo, znači da pročitate 10 minuta, vam treba, ne više, jako je zanimljiv tekst. I onda ćemo o tome diskutovati. Znači 10 minuta, to će otprilike biti i do kraja časa, ali počet ćemo malo da pričamo o tome, pa ćemo nastaviti 29. nego 30. Milane, jeste dobili?
Da, stigla ovo te.
Znači stigla. Anastasija, pa ne znam, ajde ponovo da vam čekaj da vidim. Znate kako, Anastasija, ja ću to da stavim u svakom slučaju i sad idemo, Anastasija, a to nije Veljković, nego samo sekund. Vučilović, neće da otvori. Dajte mi adresu svoju, kucite mi svoju adresu. Anastasija. Ok, ajmo ko je pročitao, ako bi mogla da you could just tell us what the text is about and then we'll elaborate in our... Aha, ajde čekaj da probam. Znači probat ću da vam forwardujem. Samo vam. Evo, sad sam forwardovala samo vam. Ali svakom slučaju koji sada ne uspite da otvorite, mi će učionici. Ali ćete moći, tamo mislim da ćete moći. Okay, anyone who'd like to just retell us what the text is about? It's about Summerhill. Aha, Korom se javio. Opet Milan, ajde, neko drugi. Milan, thanks, but let's have someone else talk about Summerhill. If no one volunteers, then you can... Ajde, Vasili. Thank you, Milan. Ajmo, Vasili. Malo da neko drugi.
Well,
what is it about?
This text is about a school, and from what I think it's a kind of a boarding school, and it talks about the perks of being free and the importance of being free, and the guy who talks, I don't remember, I don't quite recall his name or if he even has a name, but he talks about how important it is for a child to feel free and to feel accepted, to feel approved, and the positive effect it has on a child and on the future of a child.
Okay, so that's what he, talks about or writes about. And what do you think this? Well, this is an extract from the book Summerhill. What genre do you think this book belongs to? To nije fiction, definitivno, nego je... What do you think?
Well, it reminded me of something young adult, something young people would read, but I also think it has a little bit of... I don't know, but it reminds me of... I don't know the word in English, but kao neki leksikon, tako nešto.
Well, it's more than just it's not fiction, definitely. It's about it's a specific approach to education, and in that sense, it's you could say that it's a pedagogical text. And because it's a specific philosophy behind education, you could say that it's, or specific psychology, you can say that it's about education and psychology. In that sense, it could be considered as academic.
But
yes,
I also like how spontaneous this whole text sounds, and it's not snobbish. It talks about something really important, but it is displayed in a way that's spontaneous and really it resonates with everybody. At least that's what I think.
Yes, you're right in the sense that he articulates his ideas very clearly and precisely, and you know what he thinks when he writes about Summerhill, the author. But now we all, as readers, should have always a critical approach. It's all the word sounds like a cliche, but no, it's not. we should always read everything with a grain of salt, in a good sense, not in a bad way, like paranoid way, everything is bad. No, but in a good sense. So when we read this as a text about educational psychology or educational philosophy, and you can actually find how this text is described in terms of genre and register and style on the internet, and the novel itself, because it's taken from the novel Summer Hill, and that this is a text about specific type of educational psychology. As there are different methodology, different ways of educating a child. Marijana, thank you, Vasilij. Ajmo sad malo da raširimo priču. Marijana, what would you like to say?
I just wanted to say that while reading this, I thought that it was a cult, because it has some characteristics.
It's an interesting perspective.
And then after reading it, I Googled it, and it does have some characteristics of a cult. So it's a bit unnerving.
I like your way of looking at things. It's a very interesting way of seeing it, because yes, it's almost like let everyone do whatever they want to, and they have a guru, let's say. He's not a teacher, more like a guru who allows them to do whatever they want, and that's the whole point. And allow a child to do whatever they want. If they don't want, just don't make them. We'll stop here, and thank you for this idea, because it's no one has ever compared it to a cult, and I think this is a very interesting idea, and it is. It can be compared to a cult, and we'll talk about it not on Monday but on Wednesday, on the 31st of November, and I invite you to share your opinions and attitudes, and that will be it for today. So see you on the 22nd, and I'll post the text in the Google Classroom so we can stay in touch. Okay, have a nice day. Bye-bye. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.